Okay, well, we're going to get started. It's a little bit after 3, so I want to welcome everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Dan Rounds, and I am the coordinator of the Transition Services Liaison Project. I want to welcome you guys to the monthly teacher roundup. And Cindy and I were just talking, and this is our 4th one in 2020, something new that we got started. This event gives you an opportunity to connect with some of your peers and gives us an opportunity to share some information and resources that we hope you can use with your high school students as they transition from high school to the adult world. I have a short agenda to go over with you before I turn it over. But before I do that, I want to introduce some people joining us today. And I don't know if Ben is on yet or not, but Ben Higgins is a graduate of YLF. Christy Jackson is with Teachwell Solutions. Beth Schultz is with us with the Office of Special Education Programs. Katie Gran, I believe, is with us, and I'm not sure, I didn't see her on there, but she is with the Division of Rehab Services.
Hi, everyone.
And I want to thank, oh, hey there, Katie. Thanks for joining us, Katie. And we have lots of other VR counselors I saw on the list. I want to thank you guys all for being with us. I also want to thank our staff with us today. I don't know if Jenny made it on or not. Jenny Anatra, Bev Peterson out of Sioux Falls, Dave Helverson in Sturgis, and also with us is Cindy Kirschman, and she's up in the Aberdeen
can I ask
office.
you to hit beginning though? You don't have it quite on the screen correct yet. I'm sorry.
I don't have it on there yet. It's on my screen. What are you seeing, Cindy?
The PowerPoint, just not in slideshow view though.
That's funny because it shows it on mine.
Is anybody else seeing what I see? I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, it's
Andrea,
not.
Do you have a hint?
Okay, so are you using 2 different monitors?
Yes.
You're sharing the wrong monitor. That's
Okay.
probably what it is.
That's what I was trying to get taken care of before.
So
we
whatever
started.
monitor you're seeing your slideshow show up, that's the one that you're going to want to share. So you'll have to do a new share screen and then share that one. And this may or may not work. So I'm not a trained IT person, but maybe it'll do the trick.
You're a little bit better than the AKA transition liaisons are.
You guys are doing great.
Okay. Does this one help? Okay. Okay, this is of course, the first slide on our PowerPoint, but we only have a few slides to share with you today, but Cindy put this together for us. And the quote on here is unique. Teachers don't teach for income, teachers teach for the outcome, which I thought a little bit about today. And because Cindy added this quote to the slide, thinking about it, many of you might translate the outcome much differently or a little differently. I'm sure we all want to see our students graduate from high school with the tools they need in life to be successful. This would be a really, really good outcome for our students. But for a teacher that I found out about back in the 1820s, this individual had a unique dedication to teaching and a different outcome. She saw things a little differently. Abigail Powers Fillmore had first met her husband and 13th President of the United States, Millard Fillmore, and 13th President when he was her student. So you can see there's a little bit different outcome for our students. But as a teacher, she had been the first lady to have held a job after marriage. During her time as the First Lady from 1850 to 1853, she made certain that the White House had a music room and 3 pianos. And she further made additions to the White House Library. So she dedicated that to the White House and took some of her teaching to the White House. So whatever your outcome is, we appreciate your hard work and dedication to the students who need you, especially now during this particular time, going through what we're going through. And so now I'd like to take you to our agenda. So first we're going to have Ben with is a YLF graduate, and then we'll have a little discussion on a grant opportunity, and Christy Jackson will talk about that. And then Beth Schultz is going to share a little bit of information with you in regard to in regards to graduation requirements. And then we're going to have some information and some resources shared, and then we'll wrap up with Cindy. So Cindy, do you want to go ahead and introduce our first speaker, please?
Well, I will, but Ben, are you on yet? We have invited a young gentleman from Groton who attended our Youth Leadership Forum in 2019. YLF is a week-long training for high school youth with disabilities, and it will be happening the first week in June. I think it's June 2nd through the 10th, 2021. Keeping fingers crossed at Northern State University. The applications are on our website and they are due December 20th. So we thought we'd put a big plug in for that. And Ben will be joining us. So I think what's best we do now is let's move on to our next speaker. And when we see Ben jumps on, we will have him join and give his little speech to you. So, all right. So next we have on our agenda Beth Schultz, who was from State Special Education Programs. Graduation and the changes that are occurring, it's kind of been a hot topic conversation piece. So we thought who better to really tell us about it and explain it to us than Beth, who is our transition liaison at State Special Ed Office. So Beth, I'm going to turn it over to you, and Dan, if no, you won't need to make her co-host. That's fine.
Well, unless you want me to share some of the
yes.
resources on the internet.
Yes, that would be good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cindy. I don't have access. I can't get access to my
Hey,
toolbar.
Beth, I'll make you co-host.
Okay. So I am Beth Schultz with the Special Ed Office, and part of my duties in the Special Ed Office is graduation and actually transition as well. And this really fits hand in hand. And we have had a lot of questions from districts about, so when we're offering classes for graduation, if we modify those coursework, what does that look like? So
Beth, are you there?
Dan, yeah, can you hear me?
We lost you for a while.
Oh, okay. Dan, can you go to the next slide? So what are the graduation requirements and what do they look like? So this is a screenshot of one of the infographics, and Andrea can also speak to this as well because she's kind of the guru on graduation requirements. But this, I just wanted to show you what the basic graduation requirements were. And it's the 4 units of the English language arts, and you can see them there. The 3 units of math, and you have to have the Algebra 1 credit in order to receive that high school diploma. Science, you have to have at least biology, and then any other science credits. Social studies, and you can see the 3 units in social studies that you need. You also have to have any combination of the following, which would be your CTE, your capstone, or a world language, I think is what that says. You have to have 1 unit of fine arts. You have to have 1 unit or a half a credit of personal finance, physical education, and the health, one of the health credits. And then there's 5.5 electives. So that makes it 22 credits that the students need in order to graduate. So then part of that conversation is so then what does modifications or accommodations, how does that play into graduation? What I have always said is if you have students who are taking a class and you're doing accommodations, that doesn't take away from the class. That's kind of like presentation. That's kind of like how are the students getting that information? They're still receiving the same content standards, just still receiving the same information as all of their non-disabled peers. It's when you start modifying the coursework so that it doesn't look like or feel like or meet the content standards that all of the other students, non-disabled peers, are receiving. That's when it doesn't meet the graduation requirements. So an example that I've been throwing out there is Algebra 1. So if you have a student that really struggles with Algebra 1, what you can do is you can cut that class into 2 classes and teach it half 1 year and half the next year. That's more of an accommodation and not a modification because you're still meeting the same content standards, but maybe you're going at a slower rate and it's easier for the student to understand it to go slower. Or maybe you're bringing in manipulatives or things to make it easier for the student to understand what those Algebra 1 concepts are. That then would be an accommodation. Now a modification would be so that you've changed it so much that they're not meeting the content standards. Then students in their classroom. Okay.
Say, Beth,
So, yep.
I
Can you
think we
hear me?
lost you for a little bit again.
Oh, I'm wondering what's going on with that. So are there any questions about this before we go to the next slide?
Graphic on the South Dakota Department of Ed website? Or where is it?
It is on the South Dakota Department of Ed's website.
Beth,
Okay,
I
so
can
I'm
put that in the
going to
chat
do
box if that would help you, the
Thank you.
link.
perfect.
Yeah, and I think Beth does have that on a slide of hers later on.
So let's go to the next slide, Dan. So I think we just talked about how modifications affect the graduation requirements. And of course, again, that's where if you modify the curriculum and the content so much that it doesn't meet the same standards as what the other kids are getting. So you've changed Algebra 1 to make it more of a life skills class, then that wouldn't meet the same content standards because you're doing more life skills rather than Algebra 1 concepts. So they still have to know those Algebra 1 concepts. So now let's say that your main class has one anthology you're using or one curriculum you're using, but you have other kids who are using a different curriculum. If they're still meeting the same standards, then it's still considered Algebra 1. We don't ever say you have to use a certain curriculum. You just have to meet the standards. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Beth, I have a question about that. So I have a lot of teachers that say to me, but he's getting some modifications in his US history, or maybe sometime we modify a test, just periodic modifications. I think people think if they have modified one thing for a student that they can't get a regular diploma.
Okay, so if they're still meeting the standards, then they would still meet the graduation requirements. So it's when you change everything so that it doesn't really meet those standards, or change so much that it doesn't meet those standards. That's when you're talking about a modification. So it's like if you change one or two small things, but they're still meeting the same standards. I keep coming back to that, still meeting the same standards, because that's what it really boils down to, is they have to meet the same standards as their non-disabled peers. You want to be careful, because you don't want to modify things so much that it's going to really prohibit what they want to do once they graduate and go on to their post-school, what they want to do after high school. Okay, so that's that conversation too. Again, small modifications is okay. I think we do that as teachers on a regular basis anyway with our kids, because we can't guarantee that every student is going to know each of the standards 100%. We can teach them, but can we really make sure that they're really understanding and learning every single concept? Even your general ed students, that's hard to do. So again, you just have to teach those same standards to those kids, make sure they're meeting most of those standards and understanding the standards. Doesn't matter what curriculum you're using, doesn't matter what books you're using. The main piece here is that they're meeting those same standards. Okay, next slide. So how are decisions made? So if you go to this website, and I think it's the same one that Andrea put in the chat box, there are a couple documents and links on that website. So if you go into, hang on a minute, sometimes I have to look at my own screen. I think if you go into the documents and links section, okay, that's where you're going to see all of this information that I'm pointing you to. The 2018 Graduation Requirements Handbook. There's the Disabilities Policy, which was updated in 2020. That's really a good question and answer document. And then districts have also been asking about graduation coding guidance for students on an IEP. And if you look, there's that document as well.
Beth, we can arrange it so you can bring those up on the slide like you wanted to, okay?
Okay, I can do a screen sharing. Hang on, let me get to where I need to be. I have too much open on my computer. Imagine that, huh? There we go. Okay, so now I want to share my screen, don't I? I'm not real good at this Zoom yet, because okay. Host disabled participant screen sharing, so I can't share my screen.
Dan, can you make Beth a co-host? You are the host.
You should be good.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the screen I was talking about, where if you hit that plus sign in front of the documents and links, this is where all of those are. That infographic that's on the side over here, it's this second document. It's that required infographic document. Basically what I showed you were the basic graduation requirements, and Andrea talks then about how the kids can get endorsements that go beyond those basic graduation requirements, and you can find that in that handbook. If you go down further, you will find, let me get down there, the disabilities policy updated document. But the one thing that I really wanted to show is the graduation coding guidance for students on an IEP. Okay, I don't know how many were aware that this is out there, but it really does talk about those specific pieces. So here is questions for districts to ask about students. So what were the course and course content standards for graduation? Were they on the path towards graduation? Did the students learn the same content standards? Or modifications to the course for graduation and students used to change, lower, or reduce the learning experience? Okay, so that's what we're really looking at. And so these are really all of those kinds of questions. So the first one shows that if they are on that path towards that high school diploma, this is what it would be. If they did not meet those, then this is the second box is what those answers would be, or those questions would be. So if you continue to go down on that slide, you will see that these are the special education exit codes. These are not the general education exit codes. These are those special education exit codes. So the only one we use if they're going to get their high school diploma is the 2. Okay. If the student has met their IEP goals and the modified course requirements, so for the modified course requirements, that means they're not on track towards graduation and they're coming back to school, they've met their IEP course requirements, but they're coming back to school, then they're going to get the 03. So this means they might be coming back for transition. Again, it's that modified course requirement, not on track to get the regular diploma. Number 4 is they've reached maximum age. So they have not met their IEP team modified coursework. They've just aged out. Okay? They've aged out. Okay, let's go to the next one, 13. So this one was where they have completed those IEP team modified course requirements, not on track to graduate, and they've not come back to school. Basically, they've dropped out. But this just shows that yes, they did complete their IEP team goals, and they didn't come back for transition. 14 shows that yes, they've completed those IEP team modified course requirements, again, not on track to graduate, and then they aged out. So the difference between 14 and 4 is one, they've met their IEP team goals, and the other one, they didn't. Okay, does that make sense? Are there any questions about that?
Beth, this is Bev. I'm wondering how many teachers, sped teachers, actually do this coding. You know, is it typically the teacher or is it someone else at the school?
That's the district decision. Okay.
So some of you teachers that are out there, can you let us know? Like, I haven't seen some of these codes before. I wasn't aware there were so many.
Okay.
This is Sarah Feldhaus from Howard. I guess usually I consult, we have a SPED director that we share with Madison. So usually I just consult with her, kind of keep her in the loop as the kids are in their junior, senior year. And then I sit down with our secretary is the way we do it, I guess, just like we do child count. Her and I sit down and make sure everything's in the system correctly. But then we did find out that there was a issue when we were coding last year or something. There wasn't an option somewhere for a modified diploma. So
there isn't a modified diploma. We only have one diploma in South Dakota.
Okay. So then if they do not receive, so then what do we mark? There wasn't anything to mark.
So then that's that 14, did they age out?
No, like it was in a different spot than the sped part. Like it was the different part of the system that there was not an option to put. I'll have to figure out where that spot was, but there was a spot to put those codes, but then there was a different spot that like our administration puts in, or well, it's our counselor, and he didn't know what to put for that spot because it wasn't an option for those
Would
codes.
that be not in the special ed part of it,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, so we didn't know what to put for
I
that.
know what you're talking about. You're probably talking about the general ed codes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look in the student desk guide for Infinite Campus, there's a crosswalk between the general ed codes and the special ed codes. I can, so let me share my screen again. Hang on a minute. And see if I can show you where that is. Okay. I don't know if this is, oh, let's try this one. Okay. Okay, so let's go back. I don't know about you, but when I'm in here, I always use this A to Z. Okay. So Infinite Campus, then go down to the documents. And I think in this one, it is the Student Data Collection Desk Guide. Okay. I think it's like way down towards the bottom. I think I just made everybody dizzy, right? So right here. Is this what you're talking about? So if you have a code of a student graduate, so in the right-hand column is the special ed codes, and the left-hand column is the general ed codes. So if the special ed code is 2, the student graduated, then you're going to put 4 in the general enrollment record. Okay. If you continue to go down, 4 reached maximum age. In the general ed portion, it's going to be 7 reached maximum age for special education. If you keep going down, remember we talked about the code of 13, discontinued education. They completed their modified course, or here, 3, continues. They've completed their coursework and they're continuing, so they're going to do the 19 code, student continues, modified course requirements. 13, we talked about the discontinued education. They've completed their IEP modified goals, but they didn't come back to school. Then you're going to do the 20 in the general ed. 14, so they've completed their IEP team modified goals and then they aged out. It's going to be 21 in the general enrollment.
Isn't there another spot though when you have to go in and do stuff to determine if they get like the basic diploma, the advanced, and whatever?
Oh, that one. So
Yeah.
that Andrea would maybe know more about that.
Okay.
In campus, and I don't know, maybe Andrea doesn't even know, but in campus, I think there is a screen in campus where you have to write, like you said, do the advanced, the endorsements.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's no
guess
spot.
what? I do
Yep.
know that. That's on the
There's no
graduation tab.
yeah. There's no spot if there's going to either continue, to do transition, or if they've completed their program and are not continuing. It's just the different, whatever, stages of diplomas that South Dakota has now, the different paths or whatever you want to call them.
That's
So-
Advanced
because South
endorsement.
Dakota only has
Yeah.
one diploma.
Right,
We don't have an alternate diploma. We don't have a modified diploma.
right. So when we go and do that part of it, there's nowhere to put for these kids. There's nothing to put there.
That's
That
because
I
you have to
cannot
use those
answer
other
on that
codes.
part.
That's one more cool document that you showed, that you passed over, but it's really good. I'd like to bring to people's attention is the state special education graduation regarding students with disabilities. That's really a nice document that explains and has a lot of good frequently asked questions in it.
Mhm. Yep,
That's
that was
also
that
on
other
that same
document
website.
that I didn't click on. That was that
Yeah, that's
disabilities
okay.
guidance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does
Yeah.
anybody have any more questions for Beth?
So quick question. So if they, go till their senior year and then they didn't meet graduation requirements, they're not coming back. So are we, as the school district, essentially being dinged for having a dropout? Like, I don't understand that part of it, I guess. I don't understand the logic of that.
Yeah.
I don't think nobody can, and even at the, I mean, it comes down from the federal level on that, so, yeah. School districts are doing what they can for kids to keep them in school, but yeah, then they get dinged. I agree.
Yeah, the number one feedback I get from my parents is, so basically if my kid's on an IEP, they're not going to be able to graduate with a diploma is the I don't know, the vision and what they're envisioning as, so. I don't know.
But I don't think that's correct either.
Right.
If
Yep, I
student's on
agree.
an IEP and they're getting just accommodations and just a few modifications, they're still on track to graduate. And they'll still graduate, maybe not in 4 years, but they'll still graduate.
Right. And I guess my next question is, you guys talked about like splitting that Algebra 1. So we used to do that. Like now in Howard, we have the pre-algebra, Algebra 1, where we used to have Algebra 1A 1 year and then Algebra 1B the second year. So now we don't have that. So like whose responsibility does that fall upon? Like, is that the SPED teacher now needs to praxis and get those practices done? Or like, how does that work within school districts if we have students that need to split that Algebra 1 into 2 years?
That's going to be a district decision. Yeah.
Lots of questions, but you can always forward those questions on to Beth at State Special Ed or even onto one of the liaisons, and we can try and help find the answers out to those also. But I think we do need to move on to our next agenda piece. Time just goes so fast for this hour. So our guest student speaker is on. So we're going to go back on our agenda and talk with Ben a little bit about his experience at YLF. Ben, I mentioned to the audience and who was on is teachers and VR counselors, some school counselors. But I mentioned to them that YLF applications are due in December. YLF will be held in June of 2021 with our fingers crossed. So we would like you just to share with everybody why you think students need to come to YLF and what was your experience there. So we're going to just turn the program over to you, okay? Give you some time to talk about your experiences. So everybody, this is Ben Higgins from Groton High School.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Am I coming in all right?
Yes, perfect, Ben. Very good. Thanks.
Okay. Hi, I'm Benjamin Higgins. I am a, senior at Groton Area High School. I went to YLF in 2019, and I'm here to talk to you all about the potential benefits for your students for attending YLF. Please forgive me if any noise is coming in or anything. So when I first heard about YLF, I thought, hey, it's just a 2-week camp on college campus. Sounds all right. But when I came there, I found some familiar faces from my own school. I met some other people who I did not know but had some relation to, and complete strangers, all of whom were connected to me via my, well, disability. I have autism spectrum disorder. But as I began to interact with the various team leaders and co-leaders and counselors and guests, I began to think, what is all this going to do for my education? And it turns out quite a bit. Being able to understand about how my disability and how others' disabilities function help out greatly in the education process. Being able to know your own limits, your own needs, that can be very beneficial. And by going to YLF, kids can learn about, well, how does this function? How does our government work? I believe we had a meeting with a government representative, one of our congressmen. But as we learned more and talked more and socialized more, we each got to know each other better. And by the end of the 2 weeks, we were all more understanding. We knew a lot more about each other and ourselves. And ultimately, I think that we learned quite a bit of useful skills, including financing, various life skills, and so on and so forth, along with the typical independent living skills that come with living on a college campus. So in the end, YLF was a great opportunity that I am very happy I was able to take on, and I'm very happy that I'm able to talk to you all about the various benefits of it. So that's my piece. If anybody has any questions or comments.
And what would you suggest to the teachers and VR counselors if they had a student who absolutely thought it would be a joke and refused to fill it out? You know, and it's up to the students, right? But, you know, if the teacher really felt YLF would be so good for the student, but the student doesn't think it'd be worth his time, is it worth your time?
It is absolutely worth any student's time. I can tell you from experience, kids don't really do a lot in their free time if they have nothing to focus on. So having something that you can go to and schedule for and ultimately interact with other people who you don't know but have a good setting to be with, that is worth signing that paper and doing that paperwork in general. Ultimately, if a student were to tell you, I don't want to go, or it's an absolute joke, as I have heard from a couple of students in my classes, I would tell them the possibility of being able to learn more about, well, leading each other and yourself through life is priceless. You can't put a number on it, and ultimately any time that you spend learning it is time well spent. Of course, you can put that in your own words.
Exactly. Ben, you liked it so much that I see you also put an application in to come back as an assistant team leader. Is that correct?
Indeed it is. I had a great time at YLF. I can say it over and over again, but ultimately I wish that everyone had as good a time as I did. And if I could help contribute to anybody's experience, that would, you know, make it, I'm sure that it would help some kids out having someone with a common denominator and link between them. And ultimately, being able to help out other kids is something that I want to do.
Excellent.
So YLF would be an excellent opportunity for any student who wants to be a co-leader or just a delegate.
Right. Does anybody have any questions for Ben? As I said earlier, the applications for the high school delegates are due December 20th. I did put the link where you can find those applications from at, you know, the student, you can help the student as much as they need to fill out that application. We're more concerned in the content of that, not that they didn't write it out or anything. Any and all students are welcome. We provide the supports and services that they may need during that week to participate. So Ben, I want to thank you very, very much for jumping on. You did a fantastic job. A couple of people already have said they really appreciate you being on. And so,
Yeah, thanks, Ben. This is Dan and Pierre. I really appreciate you helping us out.
No
Thank you.
problem. Anything I can do to help out the team and people behind the experience that gave me so much. Well,
Very
thank
good.
you all for giving me your time and attention. I will take my leave now. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Now we'll turn it over to Ben, or I'm sorry, to Bev.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, he's a tough act to follow. Holy cow. Talk about some leadership there, right? I'm hoping we will see him again in the future. Okay, so I think hopefully you guys have all seen at least one, if not several, emails about this DHS grant opportunity. We thought we'd bring it up one more time before it's due here. There's a request for proposals out right now from Division of Rehab Services, falls under DHS, for grant money for establishing or expanding transition programs for students with disabilities between ages 18 and 21. So this request for proposals is soliciting proposals from school districts or educational cooperatives who want to do this, either establish a program or expand it. The process is pretty formal. It has real strict deadlines. The deadlines for submitting a letter of intent and to ask questions has already passed, but you still can submit a proposal for the actual money. Proposals are due no later than December 21st. So this is it's a great opportunity for your school or your program to, start a program if you don't have one currently, or to expand it, perhaps, if you do have a transition program already. We would strongly recommend you talk to maybe an administrator at your school, or if you have a grant writer there to, talk it through if you're interested in doing this. And we have invited Christy Jackson. Christy's the Career Programs Coordinator at Teachwell here in Sioux Falls. And she is going to share with you just some information. They had applied for this grant last year and were awarded some money. So Christy can tell you kind of how they went through the application process and can tell you about the new program that they got established due to this grant. So Christy, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being willing to share your information.
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. So as Bev said, my name is Christy Jackson. I'm with Teachwell Solutions in Sioux Falls. And my professional background has been in career counseling, but over the last several years, I've worked a lot on the high school side with IEP consults and then helping our existing transition program here. And so it was kind of a unique experience to be able to see the high school side and then what it looks like at a transition program. And so when the grant came across last year, we were just really, really excited because there were so many things that we had always said, oh, it would be great if we could provide these additional services. And so the grant was able to allow us to do that. In talking with Katie Gran, who's on the call, and also with Bev, wanted to just limit my comments. If you have the RFP in front of you, the scope of work, it's on page 7. And I don't think I can share my screen, but I do have that pulled up if I could get access to share it. But anyway, some of the things that that we noticed in looking at the scope of work, point 3.1, they would ask that if you're applying that you are looking at ways of providing or expanding on services for students 18 to 21 with disabilities. And so for us, already having a program, some of the things that we wanted to add were things that students had access to in high school, but maybe for a variety of reasons weren't able to access as much. So we looked at things like adding in more career development, access to post-secondary classes, lots and lots with self-advocacy and getting them involved in that whole process of participating in their IEP, participating in their pathway development, and then really focusing a lot more on work, trying different work, working longer, feeling more comfortable in just the whole process of work. And so we really focused ours on some of those specific things. Let me see if I can share yet.
Yes, Dan
Okay.
made that available.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to pull up, just in case you don't have that in front of you. This is the scope of work. And so let's see here. I had talked a little bit about 3.1. So for 3.2, like I said, I just wanted to provide just some real brief comments. One of the things that's really interesting about this grant to me is that the whole focus right here, how we interpret it, is that there's things that are required for transition services through IDEA, but then when you add in the vocational rehabilitation side through pre-employment transition services, it just really, really enriches and enhances what we were able to do. And so that job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences, we've added in addition to project skills, lots and lots of mini internships, even micro internships, which is kind of a buzzword right now in the career development field, counseling on opportunities, workplace readiness, and then, like I said, instruction and self-advocacy. One of the things that we did, we scheduled quite a few meetings as we were developing our proposal last year. I looked back on my calendar and I found 9 meetings where we had just met with different transition staff, people who work on the adult services side within our agency, and just looked at ways that we could really maximize what we were already doing, and then if we were receiving the grant, then adding those additional things. We came across a resource that was really value added to us as well called Think College. And one of the things that really resonated with us was if you think of students who might be coming to a transition program and providing the least restrictive environment for them to learn some of those social skills and self-advocacy, there's a lot of research out there that shows that by getting them on a campus and around other adults, they can really, really blossom. And so that was a big part of our particular proposal. And we're right here in Sioux Falls, so it's easier for us to be able to do that. Some of the things that we envisioned in our application that we've started doing this year after receiving funding were things like if we had a student who was interested in maybe like a CNA, or I know this is going to sound crazy, even something like computer programming. How can we get them aware of those types of experiences and then tap into some of that college experience that maybe they weren't able to get at the high school level? And then tying that in simultaneously with social skills that will help them to be successful in both work and college, and then also being successful in work and the job, and then just tapping into what it means to be an adult and so forth. And so we had pictured that this would be kind of a fluid program where students might be with us for a semester, or they might be with us for all 3 years, just depending on what they needed. So that's kind of how we approached that scope of work. I know it's very different for us because we already had an existing transition program and just had really particular ideas of how we'd like to see it grow. Down at the bottom of the scope, it does say students need to be 18 to 21, not necessarily a client of vocational rehabilitation, but that's something that we've just noticed through the process of working with VR over the years, that by having them become clients, there's just so many incredible opportunities that opens up for them. And so the students that we do have in the program are VR clients, but I have 1 or 2 coming on board for the next semester who are in the process of becoming eligible, actually. So anyways, so that's hopefully helpful. That's how we handled our scope last year. Again, like I said, it was a big process. We looked at it over the course of probably 6 weeks, just meeting and thinking through how can this work and what we'd like to see happen with it. Again, the way I see it, it ties in real closely with IDEA, but it just provides an incredible amount of enhancements to those transition services that schools are providing already. So I don't know, any questions?
So Mitchell School District also got that grant this last year. In fact, that's my position is with the transition services. It's called PACT, Program for Adult Community Transition. And we started a brand new program, and the grant paid for the PAYS lab, which we have, and it paid for my position and my para's position and a lot of the equipment and things that we needed. We started out now with 7 students, and next year we're hoping to open up to communities too. So it's really a good grant. It's really beneficial for my students.
So we have an example of, so Christy was with an educational cooperative, and then Cindy's with the school district. So that's great. We got an example of both. So are you ladies willing to, talk to other teachers if they, have questions about it? They could contact you possibly. Personally, that's what I would do. It would be really helpful, I would think, to talk to someone who's been through it, been through the process, because it can be an intimidating process for one thing if you haven't done that before. So, great. And Christy, I don't think you mentioned, did you mention like the name of your program that you've got going now?
No, I don't think I mentioned that. So let me share my screen again real quick here. The name of our program, we actually came up with Strive. And so we have our Teach Well Thrive, which is our traditional program, and then Strive is basically Southeast Tech plus Thrive. And so I have if we have a second, I'll pull up just a brief slide here. I didn't want to get too detailed with this. Our biggest focus that's different from what we've done before, again, is that post-secondary piece. The grant that we received through vocational rehabilitation allowed us to pay for our primary coach in that program, and then part of my time, and then setting up an assistive tech lab, and then some curriculum as well. So we're just really, really grateful with what we've been able to do with that. We have the students that are in the program with us right now are taking college credit through Southeast Tech. They're receiving real college credit. I have to brag on them. They both actually have 4.0s this semester. We're just really, really proud of them. We've spent a lot of time and curriculum on things like to help them with executive functioning and social skills and just getting organized. One of the things that a student would really have to think through is, why would a student need a program like this if you could also go to college and work with a disability coordinator? So there's something else basically that they would need that assistance for. And what we're discovering is it's a lot of those life skills and social skills, and actually just the career development. They have a lot of potential, but it's not necessarily directed in any one way that they've had a chance to test or explore up until now. And so that's a really kind of an interesting feature with ours as well. One other slide, they're with us from 8 to 3, just like a regular school day. And the bulk of their time, it's really customized, college readiness, career readiness, and then that life skills education, dealing with emotions or helping them to advocate appropriately. We've been doing some work lately on assertiveness training in a professional way, setting boundaries, and so forth. So anyway, it's called Teach Well Strive, and we're just really grateful again for the grant opportunity and helping us to carry this forward. So
awesome. Thank you, Christy. Any last questions for either of these ladies? I see Cindy Bierman put her email address in the chat box. So again, Cindy is with the Mitchell School District, and they got money to start a program for students 18 to 21 years old. And then Christy Jackson, Christy just put her information in there, thank you, in the chat box as well. And Christy is with an educational cooperative. So Great, thank you, ladies, so much. I think probably the next slide just had some resources on it, it's tech tools. And I'm just, they're there, you know, you guys have probably seen these. We're just throwing them out there. Some of you probably are using them and have been using them already. I saw this article or read this article at Edutopia and I thought it was pretty cool. Just some, you know, quick tips and information. So we usually throw a few resources at you every time we have this. So there's your resources for today. Okay, Dan, you got about 4 minutes to wrap it up.
Thanks, Bev. It takes me a while to figure out to even unmute when I have my screen full. So thanks everyone for sharing today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate having the VR counselors on with us today too. It's nice to have, thanks Ben, if you're still on. And Cindy, appreciate you chiming in there to help us out with the grant. And I've heard people talk about both Strive and the LifeQuest program and in your high school program. So it's all good. Again, here's the date for the YLF delegate applications. They're due on 12/18/2020. One thing to note is we're gonna monitor during the year. We host this at Northern State University on their campus, so we work with them to ensure that things are okay. If we get to the point to where, you know, we had a steering committee meeting with our YLF group, and if we get to the point to where it's April, and that's when we're going to do our YLF delegate selections, then we're, you know, if they say we're not going to be able to do a 44 student program this year, then we'll cut it down a little, but we still plan to host it. So that's our kind of our game plan at this point. But we'll stay in touch with the students that apply. Again, we will have another teacher roundup on January 27th, 2021. Hopefully a brand new year with some brand new things to look forward to. And that'll be from 3 to 4. And then we also host a YLF gathering. So we invite our YLF alumni to come in and join us to talk about what progress they're making in life and to share some tips for leadership and self-advocacy. We host those on the last Monday of the month. And currently the TSLP staff are working on a Let's Talk About Work event that will be virtual. And we think that it'll work out really well for teachers because we're gonna hopefully put it together so it's recorded and students can look at it, or you can work with students and view certain segments of it. So it isn't like a 4 or 5 hour long event. It could be an hour and a half for each segment, and then you won't have to take so much time for each piece of it. But we're working on recording right now. We've had a lot of good help from employers and students alike to help put this together. We're still working right now with the providers to help us put it together. So hopefully by the middle of December, we have something ready to share with everyone, and we'll have it posted on our website, and we'll share with all of our educators, teachers, and VR counselors across the state when we have it up and running. And that's what I have so far. So Cindy, do you want to take it?
Sure. Dan, you will have to hit current slide for this last one though. So up on top, you got to hit up. You need to hit current slide up across your toolbar. Over, go to your left, over to your left, there, to your right. There.
You have it? You have it, Cindy?
I don't know if this will work or not, Dan, because it's not totally in presentation mode, but we want to thank you very much and hope you all have a nice Thanksgiving. In closing though, I'd like to share with you a poem that an acquaintance of mine wrote, a gentleman from Sioux Falls who does writing classes and writes poetry and has about 4 books for sale. And I heard this poem and I just thought you guys needed to hear it too. So yeah, Dan, you need to, it won't be a hot link until you make it presentation style. Can you go to the, hit the beginning?
Do I have the wrong slide? Do I have the wrong one up again, Cindy?
I think you're sharing the wrong screen again, Dan. It's all good.
I'll tell you, it's mixed up. Okay, I'm gonna try it again here.
It is only 2 minutes. So guys, please hang on for the poem because I think you'll really enjoy it. It's
Okay,
a
is this the
wonderful
right
thing.
one?
That is,
Is this the correct one?
Yes.
it is, but the poem's not. Oh, you know why, Dan? You need to hit teacher's poem. I can't do it. I'm not a host. There, okay. Can you share your screen with me, Dan, maybe?
Is it not working?
Nope. You guys are being very patient here.
Okay, I want to make you a host, Cindy, and then I'm gonna let you do it.
Are you seeing my slide? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Whoops.
All right, I'm starting my interview. Are you ready?
Cindy, you might have to drag your poem over to the screen that your slide is on.
The lighting is terrible.
Oh my God.
Is this better? No. I can't see. Literally did nothing. You're gonna have to hold the phone then.
This didn't, this, oh Lordy.
Hey man, you ready? These baby the best.
This is not it. I am so sorry.
Bring them in.
My friend Randy graduated from college, and I thought since she was going to be a teacher, I would bring her.
Can you
an
see
apple.
this?
Isn't that what
Hear
you're
this?
supposed to bring a teacher? I'm not sure if that's a real thing or not, but I brought her an apple, and I wrote this. My friend
You
Randy.
cannot see, Cindy.
What? Ah, I'm sorry, people. Here we go. Can you see this gentleman now?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
He graduated from college, and I thought since she was going to be a teacher, I would bring her an apple. Isn't that what you're supposed to bring a teacher? I'm not sure if that's a real thing or not, but I brought her an apple, and I wrote this for her. It's called On Days When No One Brings You an Apple. I'm not sure if bringing teachers a shiny red apple was only a thing they did on episodes of Little House on the Prairie, but it always seemed like a really nice gesture. Just a friendly heads up, there will be days and weeks that go by as a teacher where no one brings you an apple. They should, but they won't. You should receive some encouragement, a compliment, and some reassurance that what you're doing matters, but you won't. The corner of your desk will go apple-free at times for days, weeks, months. You will receive no apple, and it'll feel like your mind and body have turned to applesauce. No thank you, no we love you, no spatterings of applause. There will be days you receive no apple, not even a solo single Applejack, and your classroom has been hijacked by espresso-fueled hyenas instead of humans. On those days, no one brings you an apple and someone is now breakdancing on that last nerve that you set on a piece of cardboard for a rainy day, and it has now been pouring for days, and you want to throw in that rain-soaked teacher towel. Go back to the time before you chose teaching as your major, and remember a teacher who started off as a first day of school stranger and turned on a light in your world for the first time. It's never really been about the lessons memorized as it was so much about the ones witnessed by their eyes. When pupils' open for the first time, you are responsible for that. Like the time in history class, a history class where I only recall one lesson. It was when Mr. Joslin made it very clear on that day that no one would ever pick on anyone in his class again, ever again. His lessons in humanity have always stuck with me, and when I pray for him and his family, I hope God showers them with unlimited apples. He deserves bushels and bundles and orchards of apples for the way that he teaches, and so do you. And I can promise you, on days when no one lays an apple on the corner of your desk, you are the front line, last line, and alphabetized ordered line of hope. For some, you are the only consistent connection and reflection that someone in this world actually cares. The only smile some kids see, the only how are you doing they ever hear. It's not really about what was written on the chalkboards, whiteboards, or smartboards. It's the messages you wrote on the slate of their souls that outweigh all the apples. You planted apple seeds inside kids that will bring food to this world for generations. That's your apple on the days you receive none. And whatever flavor you prefer. Honeycrisp, Granny Smith, generic red ones. There are plenty of people who love and appreciate you more than we could ever express. We love you more than glue eaters love a bottle of glue. And from a former glue eater, that means we care about you a lot. God bless you. We appreciate you. This apple's for you.
And I thank you very much.
Hey, everybody. Still
Whoops,
clicking
just a minute. Oh, shoot.
around.
That was great. It was worth waiting for, Cindy.
It was worth waiting for. And you know what? It's true for VR counselors too. You guys are teachers to many of the students also. And I just thought it's just a great way for him to share his appreciation of teachers and for us to thank you guys for all that you do. So thank you very much for being patient with us. We're missing our Jenny, our young TA tech guru. So
Thank you, everybody, and I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And I guess if I don't see most of you, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And then we'll be back with our roundup in January.